Hello, welcome to What the Feminine, where we show the world how to have crucial, nuanced conversations and how healthy feminine and masculine embodiment are the gateway to global healing. I'm Nicole George, the CEO and founder of Sovereign Magazine. And as the host and moderator of this show, I'd like to remind our guests and audience that the questions posed in today's episode are neither a reflection of my personal beliefs, opinions, thoughts, or ideologies nor of Sovereign Magazine. They are simply a guide for us to go deeper into our constructed beliefs and ask ourselves, how can we remain open and curious to being recoded to a more compassionate, cohesive way of living? The content in this episode could contain references to difficult topics and subject matters that may be triggering for you. So please honor yourself and your inner knowing, as our show is never a substitute for any professional guidance, and always seek professional guidance when you need. Today, we have three gorgeous ladies from all over the globe. I would like each of them to introduce themselves and where they're coming from. Arin, you are first on my screen, so why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Arin. I am an astrologer for Sovereign Magazine, and physically, I am located in Des Moines, Iowa.
Yes, thank you so much. What about you, Cass?
Sure. Yeah, I own Cassandra Freya, and I'm a channel, but really work in the corporate space with leaders, individual contributors, all about liberating themselves through energetics. I'm also a priestess numerologist, and I write a column, which is the final frequency for Sovereign Magazine. I am calling in today from beautiful West Virginia, where we may or may not have tornado warnings. So you may see me disappear a little bit early today, potentially.
Okay, Abby.
Hi everyone, I'm Abigail Teixeira and I'm on Treaty 6 territory, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I am a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm a trauma recovery coach and a feminine business mentor. But above all, I am a mama to four beautiful little beings. And so that is the hat that I lo love the most that I wear. And I'm really excited for this conversation here today.
Yes, we are going to be talking about something that I have been waiting for. We built this episode a long time ago. It's called Sacred Rage: How Anger Becomes the Gateway to Healing. And first, I would like for us to define for each of you perhaps what rage, anger, sacred rage, what does that mean to you? Because we might all have different definitions. Who wants to go first?
I can jump in. Because it's very fresh for me, this topic. I've been really talking a lot about it. I even had an event like a couple of weekends ago on Sacred Rage. And so for me, rage or anger is just one of those emotions that are deeply misunderstood in our culture, especially for women. We are told, not to be angry, that you're too much, all of that kind of stuff. And what anger is not, it's what it's not is not the it's but anger is not sorry, the thought that I'm trying to gather through here. Um, People say that it's like the opposite of love, but for me, it's really what it means when my body is signaling anger is that something has been violated, right? Whether that's been a boundary, an emotion, somebody, it's like a protective mechanism, right? And there's always something behind the anger or the rage that has to either do with pain, grief, sadness, and even love. And so yeah, so I'm really excited to really dive into this juicy topic today.
Me too. Who wants to go next?
I would sort of build off of that by saying that I see anger as a secondary emotion. And what I mean by that is that it's rooted typically in fear, sadness, or disappointment. And when we really stop to listen to ourselves, I think that we'll pretty much always find that one of those emotions came first before the anger. We've been disappointed by circumstances, systems, or people around us. We've been put in a place of fear for our well-being, for the well-being of our children so often as women. And so anger is a response to that.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Cass?
Yeah, I love both of these. It's not that I had the front cover for anger, fear, jealousy. what, like last month? Is it already? I think it's interesting. So I always like to look up the definition of things, especially as we dive in on what the feminine about what we're talking about. And what came back was I roll my eyes in a sassy way a little bit, but a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. And not that that's a load of crap, but also everything that Arin and Abby have mentioned is the undertone of sort of what I talk about with clients as well. But ultimately, I look at anger the same way I look at fear, the same way I look at jealousy, and all of the above as a data point. And so, yes, it's the boundary crossing, and that's where anger comes from, or it's the expectations not met, or it's the fear, the underlying fear that's coming up that then leads us to that rage, right? And so, for me, anger, yes, just like all the emotions, is a data point, and it allows us to observe what's going on really within our bodies first to say, okay, but now what's next?
Yes. And I'd like to define it. I don't usually do this, but I do this time because I can't identify often with the word anger. But somebody in our community, the beautiful Ebony, we had a podcast. And I told her, I said, I don't think most people would describe me as angry. Most people probably have rarely seen that in me. But she said, would you describe it as inflamed? And I said, yes, I'm very inflamed. I can get very, very inflamed, not just physically because I have autoimmune diseases, but that resonates with me. And so anger can come with so many different feelings, whether you resonate with it or not. And so you have to find your word. So if somebody says anger, it lands like nowhere in my body. But if they say inflamed, I'm like, I'm right there, like I'm there. So as we define these things, find your word that resonates the most with you, because although we're going to be talking about like sacred rage or anger, find what works for you so that you can connect to this topic in a way. And so I would really like for us to deconstruct, if you will, how sacred rage is different from regular rage. Like when I say regular rage, I mean the non-constructive part of rage or anger. How can we tap into and build more of a connection with ourselves and our emotions and these feelings and these data points so that we can have a healthier embodiment of femininity and masculinity? Who wants to tackle that? I see you smiling, Arin.
Well, I guess I think that that you already sort of named um the deciding point, or the crossing point. Is it constructive or is it not? I myself am a student of Stoicism, which is a philosophy, a school of philosophy. And Seneca especially has written on anger, as has Marcus Aurelius. Two philosophers who I like to read their works very much. And they often point out that the antidote to anger is delay, frankly, to not act out of what they call a brief madness, but to sit with it. And often these moments of extreme anger or extreme fear are not good motivations for action, right? We don't usually make great choices when we're in that frame of mind. However, when you're surrounded by injustice, people or systems that don't respect your boundaries or don't respect you in general, that sort of outrage doesn't go away. You can delay it, you can sit with it, but that's my experience, that it doesn't go away. You might not be in this sort of condition of brief madness anymore. However, it's still in you. And that sort of rage, I think, can be channeled into really constructive um, action, well
Yeah.
thought out, planned, organized action. And I think that that's probably the most constructive use of anger or rage in my lived
I love
experience.
that. I love that because I've never thought about it from the aspect aspect of chronic rage from oppression or from, oppressive systems and structures or people. I've never thought about it from that aspect. And it's funny that you bring it up in that way because I was sharing with a couple of you before we got on the call that one of my dearest friends has had a diagnosis in her family. And I've been sharing with her that he's been in that for so long, he might not feel the symptoms, right? There's this chronic numbness, if you will, like just with high blood pressure, we adjust, right? Or if we've been feeling anemic, we might not even know what not feeling tired feels like, right? We're just tired all the time. But I've never thought about it from the aspect of rage and anger from oppressive systems. Abby, I know you're probably like itching to say something about this.
Yeah, I mean, the way I've experienced anger, because similar to you, Nicole, it's not something that it's an emotion that I am becoming more and more familiar with in a healthy way. Because I have experienced anger and rage in a very unhealthy way, witnessing it in my childhood, with abuse, all of that kind of stuff, right? And so anger, like any emotion, it's a signal, right? It's a messenger that our body is telling us that something's going on, right? And so there it starts with anger, right? And then for me, what happens with when we suppress that anger, it then becomes rage, right? Where it's almost like a pressure. Um, so when it's been silenced or suppressed for a really long time, so I'm thinking about, things that like injustice, trauma, repeated harm, all of that kind of stuff, can very much turn into that rage. And then you ask the question about what's the difference between the anger, like rage and sacred rage. I think when it becomes sacred, it's because we are aware of it now. Instead of repressing it, we're starting to look at it and we're honoring it. And now it's guided more so by truth and integrity rather than um, just kind of trying to silence it, just, oh, like I'm angry, I'm just gonna put this away kind of thing, right? And now we're actually like observing it, getting curious, and really starting to get to the bottom of like, what is it actually trying to protect me from? Because it started off as anger. So what is it, what, like, and really learning to listen to it. And then oftentimes I will know, when I really sit with it and allow for it to, I guess like similar to what Arin talked about, like in the first instant when we do like feel that, it's not, we're very foggy, we're not clear-headed, we're not able to actually like sometimes even like take a breath and just actually get curious around it. We kind of have to allow for the time to pass a little bit for us to like for me to actually like look at it in a way that is going to be conducive and healthy. And then once that initial reaction fades a little bit, then I can get curious and be like, okay, like why was I signaling anger? What was behind that? And then really getting curious. And then that's how I feel it really becomes that sacred rage where now it's in my awareness, it's in my consciousness, and I'm actually wanting to work with it rather than against it or suppressing it.
Yes, yes. Cass, what about you? I see you
Yeah, there's
nodding.
a couple things. You'll see me like I'm like taking notes because I think all of us bring our certain filter, right? Energetically that we see anger and rage and sacred rage or whatever words you end up using. But Nicole, you had asked us to like, and not just us, but the audience as well, when you think of anger, what other words come to mind, right? And you said inflamed. Well, for me, anger is fire. And so when I think about fire, it can either be fuel or it can be destruction, right? And so this is sort of how I think about how we use anger, how it becomes sacred rage versus the destructive, the isolation, because that's really what that contrast is, right? The anger in isolation is detrimental not only to us, but the rest of our community. But anger and fire and fuel in community is where we sort of save ourselves, right? And so the other thing that I wanted to mention, I was thinking about the delay piece, Arin, and I love that teaching. But and also to your point, this chronic rage, this chronic anger that so many of us have felt because of the trauma we've experienced and the awareness we've had of the things that are coming to light now, for so much longer than maybe a lot of, speaking as a white woman, a lot of white women have had in the past, right? Um, I always ask myself, am I angry because and I'm absorbing this anger, or am I in a place where I can see the anger and actually observe it? And so absorbing versus observing is something that I come back to, because the absorbing leads to isolation. And I'm like pointing at my notebook. You can't see this. But observing comes from talking about it, being with community, fueling perhaps the initial destruction of a system or a thing or a narrative or a belief, but then building up what's next, right? That fire, that fuel, that phoenix power is really what I'm visualizing right now.
Yeah. Ah, I
Yeah.
love this. This is so good. I knew this was going to be such a good episode. Like my mind is going in like so many different directions right now. I don't even know how to address it. So, where I want to go next is something that's really, I forget who said it at the very beginning, and I'm not going to remember because my brain's just not all here today, but somebody said how we have been taught and what we have been taught about if girls can be angry, women can be angry, and what that looks like. And I would love to talk about the stories that we have been told of how we're supposed to show up and how we can lean a little bit more into healing our masculinity and femininity around rage and anger and showing up in a way that honors both sides. Because I think it was you, Abby, if I remember correctly, you were saying like showing up and we're being called too much or too emotional or whatever, depending on how we're showing up. And Cass, I know you have a long history with that as well in the corporate world. But and Arin, actually, you just had some incidences with your boss recently, right? And so we all have this experience of having some sort of emotional trigger, if you will, and either being afraid to show it or showing it and then being told something. But how do we, I don't want to say fix it, how do we transmute that situation for the highest good of not only ourselves, but others?
Mm.
Oh, I got you. You're all looking like staring,
Well,
thinking.
I think one of the things that, whether it's anger or anything else, I think a lot of times we've been taught, like I'm looking because it's just like I'm seeing this series of things that have played out in my life that have brought me here, right?
Mhm.
And being able to feel anger. There are moments where the rage almost becomes too much, right? And it is burning and it is isolating. But finding the safe ways energetically that each one of us needs to uniquely process that, I think is the key first step, right? We should never be like, oh, I'm angry. It's a data point, even though I still feel like I'm going to vomit or whatever else is happening in your body, right? Because you're so worked up about something, you have to let that come out some way. And so for me, right, like I'm always going to lean on my priestess numerology, right? And so for me, it's moving my body. Like the five energy is all about the physical body, sweat alchemy. This is how I get it out. So, like yesterday, I played an entire game of soccer, right? Had no subs. I was dead afterward, but I never felt so free. And so during that game, I actually was thinking about all the things that pissed me off during the week, right? Like all of the things, the Epstein files, the like rage about war that's going on, our own country, like all of these things. I'm going to get super like emotional about it, but this is how that also leaves the body, right? And so for me, it's a very physical thing. I could paint. That's not the same thing as running and sweating and crying it out. And I think that is the first step in transmuting this energy to refuel yourself and to actually take action with that anger. So I'll leave it at step one for me.
I couldn't agree more because before you said it, I was like, oh, I just keep saying so often over these last few months, I just need to go to the gym to move the energy in my body. Like that's all it is. I'm just moving the energy. I don't necessarily place an emotion on it. I just can feel the buzz in my body that needs to move. And that's how I've been doing it. But other people might use meditation or reading or my daughter loves to draw. So for her, it is that she journals a lot. I mean, I can't believe she's been journaling since she was like 8. Just naturally, I never taught her how. She just did it, right? So everybody has some way to move emotions in their body, and you need to find that for yourself.
Mm.
Who wants to go
Yeah.
next?
Well, I have some thoughts. As an astrologer, of course, I often view life through that lens. And as we're talking about this, I can't help but acknowledge the fact that we're talking about Mars, uh, the god of war. And he does rule cutting, burning, fire, inflammation, all of these things. And I think I've mentioned to you before, Nicole, I have Mars conjunct Pluto in my first house of Libra. So yeah, Anger and I are old friends. We know each other quite well. And similar to what Cass said, I too have to move my body. Being in the first house, it's a very physical thing for me. And I do a lot of kickboxing, literally punching and kicking, whether it's a heavy bag or the air. And I lift heavy things, frankly. And I feel amazing afterwards. It's just, it's like, don't talk to me until I've had my morning workout. Just don't do it. But I also keep these planets in the Venus ruled sign of Libra, which does bring in the arts. And it does bring me back to the Stoics who said, other than delay, that's the other antidote to lean into music and the arts. And so that sort of brings us to the expression piece and the idea, the soothing that Venus brings as sort of the opposite or counterpart to Mars, yes, to Mars, this soothing balm. And then my mind also went to the Hindu and Vedic mythology of Kali. Of course, she is the goddess of divine feminine rage and an aspect of Shakti. And there's, the stories of her in a rage trampling her husband, Shiva, and that skin to skin contact sort of bringing her back to the present moment. And absorbing her rage, grounding it, right? And there's another story about he soothed her by challenging her to a dance contest. And, here again, we have the movement, getting out like the stagnant energy out through your body and leaning into the arts as a constructive channel for releasing some of the tension that so often comes with anger and rage.
Yeah, it's so good. Oh my gosh, my mind is just like swirling. Okay, Abby.
I love everything that these ladies are bringing to the table. It's just very juicy conversation. And I think first and foremost, like with any emotion, we need to become familiar with it because if we're not familiar with it, then we don't know what to do with it, right? And like for many of us, like we've been talking about this whole time, as women, we have been heavily disconnected from anger. So, to learn about it, to sit with it, all of that kind of stuff is like, it could be a new process. And some women don't allow that ever, which is really what I see in my work with women, with clients, is that when we really uncover what's beneath a lot of depression, self-blame, people-pleasing, even addiction, um, it has been that anger that has been so deeply suppressed that has actually turned into these kind of things, right? And then of course there's the overarching one of shame, right? Like we feel shame, like why am I so mad about this, or like why am I, like all of these kind of things, right? And then the loneliness that comes with that because we don't talk about these things, and like these are conversations that, like, look how there's just so much goodness coming out of these, having these types of conversations, but it just isn't done enough. And so when it does appear, we don't know what to do with it, right? And so I think that ultimately what I have, and I love that Cassandra brought up fire, because that was actually the name of my event, was Sacred Rage, honoring the feminine fire, because it is, our fire. And when we honor it and we're able to express it, like in my event, we were able to do that through literally fire, through drumming, through some somatic practices, some breath work, some vocalizations. One of our favorite things that we got to do in that event was yell out the, like, no, like consistently yell that out, like how good it feels to say no, like as women, because oftentimes we have to like people please and be nice and all these kind of things, right? And so yeah, it's just really, really beautiful when we're able to actually name it, allow for us to move with it, and then be able to transmute it into something else that's going to be, whether grief, transmuted, to compassion, all of that kind of stuff. It's actually a beautiful emotion when we know what to do with it.
Yes, I
Mm,
love that
I
you
love
said
that.
when we know what to do with it. So let's give them one takeaway as we wrap this up. What would be one takeaway that you would give our audience as to how to deal with it? Who wants to go first?
So,
Oh,
oh,
I'll
go
just
ahead,
wrap
Abby.
it up. Yeah. So anger's like, for me, what really is the culprit of like suppression, all of that kind of stuff, is silence, right? And so like speaking about it is just so powerful. And when we're able to actually fully express our anger, we're able to reclaim a lot of parts of ourselves that were shut down, like our boundaries, our voice, our power, that kind of a thing. And so, befriend your anger, is what I would say, and have these kind of conversations where we can actually talk about what it looks like to do that.
Yes. Okay, Cass, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't doubt yourself when you're angry. Like, don't beat yourself up for being angry about something. I think that's the first thing that we tend to do. And I would challenge all of us to say, when we get angry, we're not going to apologize for it. As long as we're not hurting people outwardly, right? There's always a caveat, but I would say give yourself grace and know that this anger is here for a real reason and it's worthy of your time.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
Erin.
that's beautiful. I guess mine would be just simply regulate and then respond. Um, yeah, because I think that's the difference between doing something constructive with your anger and doing something destructive with your anger, right? It is that piece of self-observation and awareness and exploring where your anger comes from. And then you can decide what you can actually do about it and with it, and giving that anger an outlet to express in the world in a positive way to improve your situation and that of others.
Yes. Oh, I love this conversation. Okay. Well, everybody's details will be in the show notes. They're all in our community, community.sovereign-magazine.com, and many of them will be back for some more on another episode. So definitely like, share, subscribe, comment below. It helps us in the algorithm, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you all.